How's it going, real dealers? It's your man Philip Hall, and before we begin today's podcast, I want to give a huge shout out to our peeps over at Men's Trends. Men's Trends is a new clothing line on the market that specializes in the best workout attire for your next quarantine workout or gym workout wherever you are. Make sure to go follow them on Instagram at Men's Trends and also check out their line on menstrends.com. Make sure to use our code The Real Deal for you to get 25% off on your next purchase. Stay fit, stay strong, and always keep it real. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. How's it going, real dealers? It is your man, Philip Hall, and welcome to episode number 9 of the Real Deal Bros podcast. And today I got a very, very special guest with me. He's actually a race car driver. So, yeah, like a little background about this guy I got here. He started racing go-karts back in 2010. His first year in go-karts, scored 6 wins. In 2011, he was a WKA, which is World Karting Association champion, scoring 4 wins that year. 2012, he was Southeastern Division champion with 11 wins in go-karting. He has a little bit of experience in the NASCAR Can-Am Pro East series. And he's also currently an IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge racer for Riley Motorsports. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome my guest, Dylan Murry.
Hey, thank you, Phil, for having me on here. I'm excited to be on the podcast on the Real Deal Bros.
All right, awesome, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on. But Dylan Murry, pro race car driver out of Cartersville, Georgia, currently races in IMSA. And man, I guess the way to start off is when and how did you get into your start in racing? Just give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to tell my dad's story on how my dad got into racing because so we kind of got in racing the similar way. So my dad raced in IMSA for many years, almost 40 years, raced factory, Porsche, BMW, Lotus. And he never drove on a racetrack till he was 24 years old. Wow. His parents knew absolutely nothing about racing. His father worked at a railroad company, and his mother was a stay-at-home mom, just put dinner on the table at 5 o'clock every night. So my dad, he was with one of his buddies one time, and he saw an ad in a magazine for the Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. And he was like, what is this? I've never heard of this before. I think that'd be fun to go see. So he goes, because, we live right by Road Atlanta. He goes out one weekend to Petit Le Mans with one of his friends, and they're going into the track. And for those that haven't been to Road Atlanta, it's a very special track. As you're driving in, you turn in through the gate guard, and you see all of a sudden this downhill turn 11 going down to turn 12. Cars are rolling at speeds of almost 140 miles an hour going down that turn. And 40, 50, sometimes 60 engines, all totaling up thousands of horsepowers coming down that hill. And so that's what happened to my dad. He came in, he was one of his buddies, never seen a racetrack before in his life, goes in, sees all of these cars just rushing down the hill right as they're taking the green flag for Petit Le Mans, all of them at once. And it's just this huge roar, goosebumps are sent down the back of his neck, hair stood up. I mean, it was just a once in a lifetime experience to feel that for the first time. And that's almost exactly what happened to me. I grew up around the racetrack a lot more than my dad did. And for me, it was, I went to the races a couple times to watch my dad race in Grand Am or ALMS or whatever it was back then. And so I kind of grew up around that. But what really clicked for me was there's a go-kart track in Barnesville, Georgia called Lamar County Speedway. And it was, so a lot of very notorious race car drivers have come up through that racetrack. Danica Patrick, Tony Stewart, many others. They all came from there. And I went, my mom had some friends and they raced go-karts down there. And so we went, they invited us to go down for the day, right? So we're going in, and it was a night race. So typically those are in the day, but this one was a night race. We go into the track. I remember seeing, my friends, everybody was out there just having a good time. They had their go-kart. I was 4 years old at this time. I've never really driven anything besides one of those little scooters that you kick around the house. But no, we go in and we see my friends. We're hanging out, and then the sun starts to set. It's nighttime. They got the little portable lights up on the track all the way around the track. And now all of a sudden the go-karts are racing around at nighttime, and they got all these little neon strips and all this stuff on them. And for a 5-year-old kid, you think that's the coolest thing in the world. You see all these neon lights just flashing right by you at night, and you know your mom's friend is out there, right? You know somebody that's doing that. And I got to the point where I could not watch them race anymore because I wanted to be out there so bad. It was one of those deals where it's just like, God, I just can't stand to watch this anymore. I gotta get, I turned around, I went back in the car, shut myself in the car, and I couldn't watch. And so we get back, and my friends that were there that were racing, they asked me, they were like, do you want a go-kart? And I was like, yeah, but I don't think my dad wants me to have one. Obviously, he really wanted me to have one, but because of how great of a dad he is, he never pushed it on me. He never was the one that said, Dylan, you got to race cars like me too. You know, you got to get in this world. It's fun. Just trust me. He never, ever, ever pushed that on me. And so we get back home, and that was kind of the tipping point for me of asking my dad, hey, Dad, can we get a go-kart? Can we get a go-kart? At first, you know, he was like, okay, you know, I don't know how bad you really want it. I want to see what you really want. And, of course, on the inside, he's going, come on, I want you to want this go-kart really badly. But we asked him, I asked him several times, can I have a go-kart? Can I have a go-kart? He's like, okay, finally he made me a deal. He said, all right, Dylan, you've got to do 6 months of chores around the house, whether it's pick up around the house, clean the windows, or rub my feet. I don't care what it is. Whatever I tell you to do, you have to do for 6 months. And then maybe we'll get a go-kart. I'm like, you see that scene from Dumb and Dumber where it's like, so you're telling me there's a chance. So it was kind of like that, you know, it's like a very small percent.
That's a bad move.
Right. So after 6 months of rubbing his feet and cleaning out his toe jam, I finally was able to get a go-kart, and we actually bought my first go-kart from a guy named Skylar Robinson. His dad, Chip Robinson, raced the old Nissan 962s and stuff like that. So we bought my first go-kart from them, and that was a good go-kart, good starter go-kart. I think my first podium was third place. That was after like race 4 or 5 or something like that at Barnesville. And then I kept working. We got a new go-kart. I ended up sort of winning some regional races. And this was still when I was, I would say, 7 years old at this point. And then now when I'm 8 years old, we started to get more and more competitive in go-karts. And it's like, okay, now we need to think about taking things to the next level. At this point, I'm 7-year-old kid. I don't know what I want to do in my life. I'm just racing for fun, right? So we start doing the WKA races after that. And so these are all around the East Coast. I think they had some in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, mostly in the Northeast. And so we started doing those, and it took me a little while to be able to win in those because that was another level of competition going up. Now you've got people from all over the East Coast, kids my age that have been doing this for longer than I have, and I'm racing against them. They've got the best of the best equipment. So that took a little while to get my first win in that one. I think it took, I would say about half a year, maybe a year to get my first win in WKA. It was just another step up. Then I finally got my first win, and then I finally got my first championship the next year in WKA. And then we kept kind of doing more WKA, and we got to the point where, so I don't personally come from a family of a ton of money, right? We were pretty close to maxed out on our budget on go-karts. And so we were looking for other ways. So that's when I got my very first sponsor in go-karts, was a guy named Craig Stanton. He was my dad's co-driver in Synergy. Him and Craig and Joy Stanton together, they came together and they gave me $100. That was my first sponsor, and I was over the moon about that. I mean, it's like, you know, this is just great.
I mean, $100 as a young kid, that's already a lot of money.
Yeah, when you're 7, 8 years old, right? It's a lot of money, and that's 2 tires. That's half a set of tires, right? So that was my first kind of deal, like, okay, other people actually are starting to believe in me now, so I can start to push a little bit more and more. And then I remember one night when I was about 10, 11 years old, my parents sat me down And after dinner, just me and my parents, and they were like, "Okay, Dylan, things are starting to get expensive. We can't really afford to keep going this way. Is this really what you want to do with your career?" You're asking an 11-year-old kid what they want to make their career out of. You're asking your 11-year-old kid to make a lifelong decision, right? So I mean, I thought about it, but it didn't take me 2 seconds to say, yeah, this is what I want to do. And it was at that moment where I was like, I want to race cars for a living, and I could not imagine myself doing anything else. And ever since then, my passion for racing is just growing stronger and stronger. You know, like some people, when they find like a hobby, and you like it at first, but then it starts to go down. Racing is just doing the opposite for me. The more I do it, the more and more I love it, and the less I could see myself ever going away from racing. And so it's just, like I said, ever since then, the passions got stronger. It was 11 years old where I made that decision. Then we got my first big corporate sponsor, which was iRacing, and that's what got me into Legends Cars racing. We did a viral video. You can search Gymkhana Junior on YouTube, and that was my first viral video. I think it got like 300,000 views worldwide. But yeah, it was just things like that, you know, just showing my passion for how much I love racing has kind of gotten me to the point where I'm at today, with just, you know, every day the passion just goes stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I've actually watched that video of you with iRacing. I think like you were driving a Legends car in like a parking lot, and like you were going in a circle, like you went under a trailer. Yeah, I thought that was really awesome.
So our original plan for that one was to have the tractor trailer moving, but we couldn't physically fit the Legends car underneath the tractor trailer while I was doing donuts, because it was just a little bit too low. It was like a 2 inches too low. So we had to take some boards and put it underneath the tractor trailer so it couldn't stay moving, but it was a half-inch clearance going underneath the tractor trailer.
That looks pretty close, because I think the height for a Legends car is about almost like just under 5 feet, just under 6 feet, something like that. Or
no, it's still pretty low. It's I can't remember exactly what it was. That was a while ago since I've seen some of those, but yeah, they're still pretty low. They're not like prototype low, but they're for a car, they're still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it definitely sounds like you have a very, you know, compelling background with racing. You know, if your dad starting in racing, and then you kind of coming in kind of like a second generation driver in some sort. And yeah, it's definitely like very, very interesting that, you know, you grow up in a family racing, because and yeah, like even from humble beginnings as well, because I know there's a lot of drivers out there, like pro drivers now, that say like, oh yeah, I had a dad that raced, or I had an uncle that raced. And yeah, I mean, yeah, but you kind of had like your grassroots beginning, and, you know, just having you know, that support behind you at a very early age. And Dylan, so like you being a Georgia guy, there's been like a lot of racing talent that's come out of Georgia. Like me personally, like, you know, for NASCAR, like I'm a huge Chase Elliott fan, and of course, like his dad Bill Elliott raced there from Dawsonville, and then like way back like in the 40s when NASCAR was getting started, you had the Flock brothers, and then you also have David Reagan. So who were your racing inspirations growing up?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that come out of Georgia and are successful in racing. But obviously, my number one idol is my dad. I would never, ever say anything different. He's always been who I look up to. Just not just like his driving in his career, that was absolutely outstanding, but just the way he interacts with other people and just who he is as a person. That he's always, you know, my top idol of who I always look up to. But then, you know, people ask me like, oh, well, of course it's your dad. Who else besides? If I had to choose it's number two, which is by a long shot. But if I had to choose anybody else besides my dad, and I would definitely say I've always looked up to Tom Long. He has always been just the nicest guy. And I remember the day that I met Tom Long, it was at Daytona during the Roar. And I go up, I was with my dad. My dad introduced me to Tom Long. That was when he was with Mazda Factory in the prototypes. And I was 12 years old, 13 years old at this point. I just meet this superhero of a guy, Tom Long, and he just got out of the car. He still had his earbuds in, just took his helmet off, and then he comes over and says, "Hey," to my dad. My dad introduces me to him, and then first at that moment he was the super nicest guy you'll ever meet. But then I get back, and after I do a day of networking at the racetrack or something like that, I always go back. I send some follow-up emails. "Hey, so and so, hope it was great to see you. Blah blah blah. Stay in touch." Tom Long is always the one that beats me to it. Here's a guy that I just met. He's a superstar prototype driver racing in the 24 Hours of Daytona. And not even the next day, it was that night, he sends me an email. And that was in the middle of the Roar. Right at that night, he sends me an email. "Hey, Dylan, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah." And that is what made me stand out to him so much. He is just the nicest guy, and he cares about you. He genuinely cares about everybody.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Tom Long. So like, as far as racing, because like, man, you've raced everything from go-karts, legend cars, stock cars, now, prototype cars and IMSA. And like, you raced at almost every major track in the country, like Daytona, Sebring, Road America, Watkins Glen, Laguna Seca, and like among more. Like, what attributes do you think are the most important as a race car driver?
It's definitely a lot, I would say, and this goes for if you ask any race car driver. I would say ignorance is key, because when somebody tells you no, you just don't hear no and you keep pushing, right? You have to know your limits, but obviously to be successful in racing, you have to hear no millions and millions of times and just kind of not block it out, but learn, why did they say no? How can I come back to, whether it's them or somebody else, to make them say yes? So it's definitely, you have to be completely driven, because you are going to get a lot of denial going up the ladder. And that goes for really anything in life. You're going to get millions of no's throughout life. And when you have a passion so strong for something, that makes those no's hurt even harder. And so you just have to be numb to a no almost, and say, well, yeah, you it's almost like you have to expect some no's sometimes.
Is that like even from crew chief, spotters, and is that?
Yeah, anything. Like I'll tell you a story from my dad again. When he was, this is how he first got his big ride in I think it was ALMS. It was actually in a GTP car, which was the top prototype class back then. And he was going around. He did not know anybody. This is after he watched Petit Le Mans for the first time he's seen anybody on a racetrack. He did not know a single person in the paddock. Any team owner did not know a driver, did not know anybody. He goes and he sleeps in his car because he couldn't afford a hotel. He goes, sleeps in his car, and took a shower with a garden hose off at the back. And he goes and just asks team owners. He would go to every race. He would drive to Lime Rock, which is like a 15-hour drive from our house. And he would drive all these places, go up, just knock on the hauler door, say, "Hey, is your team owner here?" "Yeah." "Can I see him?" "Yeah." And so he goes, talks to him. "Hey, team owner, can I drive your car?" He goes, "You got any money?" He goes, "No." "Beat it." And finally, after hearing that for thousands of times, one person finally said yes, and that was the one break that he got. And for me, that break, what in the sports car world, was Jim Cox. I mean, he was my first IMSA professional ride with the Porsche back in 2018. And that was my first deal. Jim and Wendy Cox together, they were the ones that said yes. And they've been fantastic ever since. So yeah, it's definitely, you have to be able to take a no a lot in racing.
Yeah, like Jim Cox, he was also your co-driver too, because I remember when you won at Daytona earlier in the year before before the pandemic started. Yeah, you had Jim Cox as one of your co-drivers to help you to that win.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So we were co-driving all last year, all of 2018. We'll be co-driving together all of this year. So he's doing a fantastic job. Looking over video and data with him, he's improved so much, and he keeps his head clean and just goes after it. He's really, really good to work with.
And I know it's probably this is very underrated to, you know, fans that are just starting to get into racing, or fans that are like casual fans of racing. But race car drivers, they actually have to stay pretty fit to be able to compete. So like, what forms of training do you do to stay competitive, or what forms of training does your race team tell you to do? Like, do you have to follow a specific diet or do certain workouts?
Right. So I like to, I'm just going to give you an analogy of what it's like to drive a race car real quick so people can understand what it's like. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're just driving on the street. You got AC. It's no big deal.
Like that.
I like to picture it. I like to tell people, okay, picture yourself being strapped into your oven set at 150 degrees during an earthquake while juggling. And you're trying to solve a calculus problem too. It really is it's more mentally challenging than it is physically. But after you start doing that for, you know, a 3-4 hour stint in the car, that's when it starts to really take a toll on you. So I try to train as specific to racing as I possibly can, which means just being well-rounded. I'll notice sometimes after a long race, oh, maybe my back is a little bit fatigued, because you actually use your back and core muscles quite a bit when you're trying to sense the race car. And neck is always a big thing that gets fatigued with all the G-forces. But I've found the biggest thing for me is the back muscles. So I try to focus on the back muscles, endurance, focusing on fast and slow twitch muscles, cardio, and getting used to heat. Being used to heat is probably the number one thing for a race car driver, because like I said, you're at 150 degrees inside a closed cockpit with no circulation in the air whatsoever. So you've got to just get used to the heat, going in the sauna, staying in the sauna, and just doing emails while you're in the sauna, you know, for 30 minutes, half an hour, something like that. And it's just, you have to stay as specific to racing as you can. And I relate that back to Craig Stanton, who was my first sponsor back in go-karts. He is, I would personally say, the most fit race car driver that has probably ever lived on this planet. Craig has devoted his life to fitness, and it wasn't really just to be fit for racing. He told me that that's kind of just his escape from all of the stresses and everything else that racing brings along with it. That's more of his escape. But he is so fit, and just, he trains specific to racing. So he told me that when he was doing 24-hour races at like Daytona or Le Mans or whatever it was, 24-hour race, he would mimic his stints on his bicycle. So he would go at like 8 o'clock in the morning for a 2-3 hour bike ride, however long his stint would be, go sleep a little bit, wake back up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, do another 2-hour bike ride, go to sleep, wake up at 11 p.m., 2 a.m., whatever it is, and go for another bike ride. So he just mimics whatever he does on the racetrack on his bike.
Wow. Yeah, I always figured that, because, you know, whenever because like sometimes I like to go on YouTube and it's like, oh, what workouts are race car drivers doing? And, you know, I'm seeing, like you said, you know, a lot of core, a lot of neck workouts, and of course, you know, cardio. Right. And especially, I feel like in endurance racing, that definitely does have to play a role, because I know you guys are out there they're driving these races, you know, whereas 24 hours or 12 hours, you know, it's all about like focus and just trying to stay awake.
Absolutely. And what I'll do too to try to improve my focus is, on a hot summer day, you know, in Georgia in the summer, it'll get up to 90 degrees at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll go outside, I'll put like a light jacket on, and I'll just start juggling, see how long I can juggle, because that's the same motion that you're doing on the steering wheel, is just juggling. You know, you're concentrating, making sure everything is perfect, getting into a rhythm and focusing on each and every ball. Just go out and do it for 30 minutes or 45 minutes in the hot sun. But yeah, it's stuff like that and everything. I mean, yeah, you can search race car driver workouts and it'll come up with a bunch of stuff. Reaction timing mostly.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I kind of want to go back to when you had your first corporate sponsor with iRacing, and I know iRacing has been playing like a huge role with the pandemic and trying to still post out some content and have even pro drivers get on iRacing to where it's nationally broadcast. And I know NASCAR for the past 3 months before they went back to racing, they were doing iRacing, and then I find out that IndyCar they start doing iRacing, and then the FIA, they're planning to have like a virtual version of the 24 Hours of Le Mans in a couple of weeks. And yeah, like, so do you also do training through iRacing as well?
Yeah, I do actually. So especially when I'm trying to learn a new track or a new car or something, and a great simulator that pairs with iRacing is called SimCraft, and they're based in Marietta, Georgia, which is 45 minutes from my house. So they let me go over and just drive their simulator basically whenever I want. If I'm trying to learn a new track, new car, whatever like that. SimCraft is the motion part, iRacing is the software. Put those two together, and when you're trying to do something like that, it is absolutely perfect. There's no better way. I mean, you can watch videos on a new track or whatever it is as best you can, but there's nothing like actually driving a track before driving it.
Yeah, because I feel like that's really where the training is starting to go into, and really also how most race teams are starting to recruit drivers. Like, they're seeing how well they can run in the sim, and then they'll take their talents from, like just from the sim rig on into a real car. And yeah, I feel like with how much technology is evolving now, and everything becoming more virtual, yeah, that's going to be the focus for race teams like in the future when recruiting drivers. I mean, example like William Byron, like he's like he got started in NASCAR through iRacing, and there's even a guy that I know, he's getting his start racing legend cars through iRacing, and it's definitely opened a lot of doors for people that want to get into racing.
Absolutely. And it's a cheap way to see if you like the sport too, right? How many people are willing to go out and spend $15,000 on a new Legends car? Not many, when you haven't had any experience racing. So iRacing is always a great start for anybody who's just now getting into the sport. You go and you get the software is like $100 a year subscription or something like that. And then you get your little steering wheel and pedal. You can get one from Logitech for $100 if that's what you want, So, I mean, it's a really great way to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. And Dylan, I think you're also in school now too, right?
I'm not. No, sir.
Oh, well, I was going to think because like I remember I saw you with a sponsor on High Point University. Like on your car once, and yeah, like I don't know, like maybe you could get a little background on how you can relate racing to education in some sort, or like one way in like marketing or management or something like that.
Yeah, racing is it really covers any subject, really. I mean, you got obviously geography because you're going all these places. You got to know, and you get different cultures and stuff all over the world. You got physics is probably the main thing in racing. Marketing is another huge thing because you have to know how to sell a sponsor, and entrepreneurship too. I mean, that's actually one course that High Point University provides is an entrepreneurship program, and it basically teaches you how to run your own company. And when you're a race car driver, you're never really working for someone. I mean, yeah, you have a team owner that you are driving for, but you're still in a way your own CEO. So it's definitely a kind of run your own business type model.
Interesting. Like I was wondering, if like you come across a lot of people in racing, like growing up, and you probably have some friends on the track. You may have some enemies on the track as well. But what's one of your pet peeves when racing?
Pet peeves? You mean like on track pet peeves?
I mean, it could be like either on track or off track or anything like that, or maybe like when you're in the garage, like what's one thing that you get tired of seeing or get tired of talking
about? Really nothing. I'm gonna be honest. Racing is just I just love racing, and I love everything about it. That there's not really anything that turns me off. That I mean, it's just, to me, it's the perfect sport. It really is. I wouldn't want to change anything about it. It really is.
Interesting.
Although I will say my pet peeve is when people spell my last name with an A. It's Murry. No A in Murray.
Okay, no A in Murray. Got it. But yeah, Dylan, like with your background, you're kind of like, to me, like when I was like doing some research on you, when I found out about you, and like, just seeing like your experience growing up and racing go-karts, racing legend cars, and also having a little bit like, putting your foot in NASCAR in a bit, and of course racing IMSA full time. You've been behind the wheel. It seems like you drive almost anything with four wheels, and
Just about.
yeah, and knowing that you like racing for Rally Motorsports, your car on the track is a Mercedes AMG GT4, and yeah, I feel like as all the different disciplines of racing that you've competed in, which one did you find the most challenging or the most worthwhile?
I would say, obviously the higher up in racing that you get, the more rewarding the feeling is to win. But really any series in racing, whether it's IMSA or NASCAR or even short ovals like late models or legends cars or go-karts, there's always going to be somebody or multiple people that's going to be really, really, really freaking good. And it's always going to be a challenge to beat them. You're going to have to do anything you can to beat them. And I think the big thing why winning in IMSA feels, or a high series feels slightly more rewarding than, a rental go-kart track or something like that, is because there's more people that are more teams that are that good. In the lower series, there's probably 4 or 5 guys that have a chance to win. Well, when you get, let's use IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, for example, the series I'm in now, anybody can win. I mean, there's 50 cars out on track at once. And I would say the top 20, anybody in the top 20 has a chance to win. It's that close. I mean, you look at the qualifying times, and from 1st to 15th is less than half a second. It's insane how many people are in that category once you get that high up. But like I said, it's just as challenging to win in like a even a regional go-kart race or something like that, because there's always going to be somebody that's been doing it for 20 years that knows all the little tiny details of whatever the car is that they're racing. There's always going to be somebody, whether you like it or not, but there's going to be somebody that's going to be challenging to beat.
Okay. Like who do you think, or like with the people that you've raced against, who did you have the most fun racing against, or who did you ever build have a bitter rival that you just couldn't stand racing against, or I don't know, how's that?
Yeah, well, there's always going to be somebody you don't like racing against in any series you go to. That's just the nature of it is, and sometimes I'm the person that other people don't like being like racing against, but it happens to anybody, right? It's racing. You're not going to get along with everybody, but it really is fun when you get to have not only an on-track relationship with someone, but a personal relationship, and you get to know them as a person. And I gotta say, all respect to every single one of my co-drivers out there, but Skylar Robinson and I co-drove together last year at VIR in the IMSA Prototype Challenge. Skylar and I go way back. I bought my first go-kart from Skylar. I've known that guy since I was, 4 or 5 years old, maybe even younger. And that was really special to be able to race with him, co-drive with him, because, we're like best friends. It's not like we're trying to be professional around each other when it's just the two of us. We know we can goof off around each other and not have to worry about losing our job, right? It's it really is. It was very, very fun and special to be able to race with Skylar in that one race. And like I said, no disrespect to all my other co-drivers. I absolutely love them. But Skylar was pretty fun to do that with.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, like as somebody that's grown up watching racing, I mean, I didn't really do as much racing. I mean, I'll race go-karts sometimes. I mean, like my dad, we kind of had like our own makeshift go-kart, and, we'd take it out to like the port and just like drive in the parking lot or something like that. Or even I'll just go to K1 Speed with my friends, and we'll just laps on the go-kart track. But but I don't know, like I like the sport that I played growing up was baseball. That's all I I really want to do. I want to play baseball. I want to take it to the
Yeah.
major leagues. But I don't know, I guess down the line, I kind of thought like more realistically, like, oh, where are my chances? And then that's when I kind of shifted more of my focus to racing and starting to learn more about it. I mean, like I'm a student at St. John's, and I go to school for sport management, and like, and people and it's funny because like I guess going to a school in New York, you don't really come across a lot of racing fans. I think like I've only met one racing fan, and like that's my friend Terrell. He also he's also a part of the podcast as well. He's he's like the co-host on here. But I mean, it's
I'd say a place over in New York that has lots of race fans, Watkins Glen. You go downtown Watkins Glen, and everybody there loves the racetrack.
Oh yeah, Watkins Glen. Well, like I'm more of like in the city. Like I'm in
New York City. Yeah.
I mean, there's you'll probably come across a few racing fans here and there in New York City, but I guess like New York City is kind of like the place for everything, where like hey, like they have everything from basketball, everything from football.
Everything gets diluted, yeah,
like everything is kind of like just that, it's a melting pot where you'll come across someone, and maybe the chances of you coming into another racing fan are like very high, but at the same time they're kind of slim because very big city. But like what, as far as off the track, like what other hobbies do you like to do?
I used to actually play hockey. That was probably one of my favorite hobbies that I used to do. But I just got so busy with racing that I couldn't spend time both with hockey and racing, so I had to sell all my stuff. I really miss it. Ice hockey was so much fun. Got put in the penalty box a couple times, but no, it was really fun. Now really my only hobby that I do is golf, because that's something that you don't have to join a league to play. You can just go out to the course whenever you got free time and just play 9 holes or 18 holes if you feel up to it. But yeah, and I think that's kind of true for a lot of race car drivers, is that because you're so busy and focused on trying to make a career in racing that you don't really have too much time for hobbies. So, I'm actually at Myrtle Beach right now. This is the first vacation I've had in like forever, is what it seems like.
Quarantine's been keeping us locked in. So
yeah, so it's nice to get out, but yeah, it's being busy with racing and everything is kind of it really takes away time from everything else.
Interesting. Like what about like during the off season when you're not racing? Like what you try
during the off season we're testing. During the off season, either you're testing for the next year, or you're making phone calls to team owners saying, "Hey, can I drive your car next year?" Blah blah blah. Because racing, you don't have very much job security being a race car driver. You don't. There's a lot of times where you have no idea what you're going to be racing on the first weekend of January, the week before New Year's. It's a very stressful time of year for us. Like I said, you ask any race car driver what they're doing on like the Christmas and New Year's holiday section, and they're gonna say they're making phone calls to team owners trying to get a ride for the next year.
Yeah, interesting. So out of all the tracks you raced at, which one do you like the most? Or what? Like actually, how about this? Which track is your most favorite, and which track is your least favorite?
So most favorite, I have to say, is Spa. I went to Spa a couple years ago, and that's a track in Belgium. If you guys don't know what Spa is, you got to look it up. Spa-Francorchamps, it is absolutely incredible. To drive it on iRacing is one thing. To watch a video of it, to see pictures is one thing. But then to actually get there and drive it for yourself and feel the G-forces going through Eau Rouge is absolutely incredible. They always said it was raining on half the track and dry on the other half, and I didn't really believe it, but it actually happened. It was raining and foggy. You couldn't even see like 10 feet ahead of you on half the track, and then on the other half it was blue skies and sunny. But that was a really cool experience to be able to go over and race there. I hope we get to do it again soon. And then in the United States, I would probably say that either Road America or Laguna Seca are my favorite ones over here.
Laguna Seca is kind of my Laguna. I live in the Bay Area in Oakland, California, and Laguna is kind of like maybe a few hours down south. Like you probably spent some time in the Bay Area if you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It's
do you like it here? Like, is it awesome? Would you want to come back?
it yeah, in California.
Yeah, like the Bay Area.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful area. Oh, I love that. I'm a mountains kind of guy, and a beach kind of guy. So you kind of get a good mix of both of them right there.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I guess like as far as racing in the Bay Area, I know the two major tracks we have here, like Laguna Seca. We also have Sonoma, and
yes, I've never been to Sonoma.
oh yeah, Sonoma's great track. It's actually well,
Yeah.
I consider Sonoma to be my hometown track, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, yeah, if you ever get a chance to race there, I'll definitely come try to see you, man.
Great.
Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, like Dylan, you're 19, right?
I'm 19.
Okay, yeah, I'm 19 too. So,
Okay.
yeah, but yeah, like 19, or you're still like a young kid, got a lot of experience, and what's your future plans in racing? Like, do you want to, win Indy 500? Do you want to win Daytona 500? Do you want to race at Le Mans? Like, what's the plan for Dylan Murray? Like, what's your 10-year plan?
I would honestly really, I would be happy making a living racing cars. But that's for me, that's not good enough to settle it. I want to be, one of the names that just stands out, right? You talk about some of the names, like whether it's Jimmy Johnson
Mm-hmm.
or Will Power or Mari Andretti or
Mm-hmm.
Hurley Haywood, one of those big names. I just want to be part of that club because for me, nothing's ever good enough. So if I win Daytona, Le Mans, and the Indy 500, 10 times more than anybody, I would still want to win it one more time. So it's for me, it's just about being as successful as I can possibly be.
Yeah, I guess I would probably say this. I was looking at AJ Foyt. I was doing some reading on him, and yeah, I mean that's a guy that's like done it all in motorsports. I mean, he's won Daytona 500,
Yes.
he's won the Indy 500 more times. Like you can count on your finger how many times he's won an Indy. Like he's won Le Mans, he's won Sebring, and I feel like I appreciate drivers that are versatile, that don't really stick to one talent. Like my favorite drivers growing up, like I was my inspirations were Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart. Like
Right.
those are my guys growing up. But I think one thing I would say about Tony Stewart, like he was very versatile when it came to racing. I mean, he got to start in IndyCar, and
Right.
he raced on dirt tracks and like racing
Right.
sprint cars. He still does, and like he's of course he had a very successful career in NASCAR. And yeah, I
Right.
just really like look up to those guys that can master more than one
And
specific discipline.
that's exactly what I've been trying to do
Mm.
my entire career. I grew up on road courses on go-karts, and then I went to ovals on Legends cars, and then road courses on Legends cars, followed by late models on ovals, and then K&N on oval and road course, and then now sports car on a road course. So I want to, and not and on sports car doing GT cars and prototypes. So that's pretty much all. I mean, I haven't done much open wheel stuff, but
Mm.
I've pretty much covered all the foundations. Yeah, the P3 was a LMP3. There's still an LMP2 and LMP1 and DPI to go, or LMDH in the future. But I feel like I've covered kind of all of the bases, and I'm able to adapt to whatever situation's thrown at me fairly quickly compared to people that have grown up just on road courses or just on ovals.
Mm. All right. As far as like just being a spectator, like is there any particular series you like to watch, or any particular like discipline of motorsports that you watch casually, even as a driver?
You know what? It's funny because I'm not actually that big of a fan of watching racing. I love racing. Really, the only races that I'll watch are my races and the NASCAR Cup races
Mm.
and IMSA WeatherTech Series races. Those are about the only races that we'll watch in our house.
Interesting. All right. Well,
I just like driving. I like driving. Watching is okay, but driving's awesome.
yeah. I mean, I kind of relate that back to when I was playing baseball. I never really, like even though like, I love watching baseball. I'll watch on television
Right.
the games on, but
Yeah.
I I never felt like that same feeling when I was playing on the field.
Right.
It's kind of like the
Right.
same, just kind of like the same way how you feel when you're racing. It doesn't feel the same when you're
Right.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
Well,
feel
and two, what I'll do too is, before I go back to a race weekend, is I'll watch that specific race on YouTube in the previous year, so I can see all the proper passing zones and what works and what doesn't at that track. And I'll watch that most of the time, both in the series I'm gonna be racing and whatever the top series is, whether it's IMSA WeatherTech or NASCAR Cup Series, just to get an idea of what the top guys are doing too.
So when is the first race back for you guys after quarantine is over for drivers, and when can you guys start going back to racing?
So IMSA announced this back to racing schedule. The first race is going to be back at Daytona. So they're doing 2 races at Daytona this year, the 4th of July weekend. But our series, Michelin Pilot Challenge, doesn't go there. We'll be back at Sebring in mid-July. So it's going to be very, very hot and sweaty down in Sebring in July. I'm really looking forward to that one. I got to tell you what, there's nothing like breaking a sweat.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I really, hope to see you back on track again. And yeah, man, it definitely sounds like you got everything going well for yourself in racing. And yeah, it's just, it's really cool because I never really expect to, come this close to talking with a pro race car driver, even like a pro driver that's at the same age as me. I mean, I remember because I think how I found out about you, I think you saw one of my stories on my Instagram page where I think I something that was like racing related or IMSA related. And I saw I wonder who this guy is. And then I found out that was you. And look scroll your post. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, it seems like he's the real deal. And he's got, he's racing for Mercedes. He's got a few wins here and there. And yeah, man, I feel like if I didn't take the time to find out who you were, I probably wouldn't even be having this conversation with you today. So, yeah,
well, I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on again, man. It definitely does mean a lot. And yeah, as a guy that's grown up watching racing and just finding out more about the young drivers that are coming up, I definitely want to highlight them so people could hopefully one day when you're big and when everybody knows your name, they can come back and watch this video and be like, oh, yeah, this is when Dylan got his start, or oh, yeah, this is when what's his name got his start when he was just coming up. So yeah, and I definitely, that's the one thing I'm really pushing with the podcast and trying to highlight young stars like you. And yeah, man, I feel like you're already there, man, and you're heading that direction.
I hope it keeps going in this direction. It's looking good right now, but the work never ends. Like I said, you got to take a no a million times.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on again. Sorry, I got my dog here.
I love dogs, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, we just got her. She's a puppy, about 2 months old. But but yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. Yeah, it's definitely great talking with you, and wish you the best of luck, and hope you see you back racing pretty soon. So,
all right, no, I appreciate you having me on my hair. It was fun.
All right, awesome. But yeah, this has been the Real Deal Bros podcast. I have my man Dylan Murry with me, and yeah, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our videos and to our channel. And yeah, make sure. Oh my gosh, my puppy. But yeah, as always, make sure to keep it real.